everybody. Welcome to today's presentation. We have a special guest from the University of Iowa School of Social Work. So this is kind of a social work production today. Mercedes Bern-Klug, PhD, MSW, is a professor and the director of the University of Iowa School of Social Work. Her research is in long-term care and advanced chronic illness, and includes working with family members who share medical decision-making responsibilities with nursing home residents. And she'll be happy to know that we have all the departments represented here, including physical therapy, nursing, maintenance, activities, EVS, all the peeps, dining. So thank you all for coming, reception, administration. And help me welcome Mercedes Bern-Klug.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Little disclosure here. This is my first live presentation in 2 years. 2.5 years. So I'm glad to be back and not seeing just everybody on little squares on a computer screen. So we've made it this far. It hasn't been easy. We've made a lot of adaptations. But we've made it this far. So thank you for inviting me today. To me, this is an opportunity to talk about something that I've been thinking about a lot, that I've worked on a little bit, and actually getting ready for this presentation has reinvigorated my interest in this. So I might be talking with some folks here at Oak Knoll afterwards about a little research project that I'd like to consider. Kim Bergen-Jackson and I worked together on an article that has been accepted for publication, and it talks about the amazing job you have done at Oak Knoll. When your quick response when you first found out about COVID hitting Iowa and then Iowa City, and all the adaptations and adoptions that your staff made to keep the residents safe and to keep yourself safe. And it is a story that is worthy to be told nationwide, because what you have done and what you are doing here is extraordinary. And it shows it can be done and it must be done. So my hats off to the staff, everybody, because everybody had a role in keeping residents safe. And you've done that really well. The other aspect of your experience that I'm really amazed by and inspired by is the way in which you kept the channels of communication open and gave feedback to the people who were having to make decisions, and talked with family members and talked with tenants and people who live here, and a lot. Everybody had to pivot really quickly, and we are still making changes and we're still adapting. But I feel very privileged to be here with you today, knowing the excellent job that you have been doing and that you are doing. This is my mother-in-law's roommate, way back, I don't know now, 30 years I guess it's been. My mother-in-law was living in a nursing home in Kansas City when we moved to Kansas City, and this was her roommate. And her roommate was so important in my mother-in-law's daily life, in part because my mother-in-law was bedbound. And this is the woman who delivered the mail. And so after she would deliver the mail, she'd sit next to my mother-in-law and speak with her about what's going on outside, inside. They'd joke, they'd giggle, just reminding me of the really strong importance that these interpersonal relationships hold, and how we need to do everything we can to allow for the time and attention to recognize the humanity in each resident, including people with dementia. I'm here from the School of Social Work. Some of you might know about Wild Bills. We've had a couple TV shows made about Bill Sachter, who worked in the coffee shop that was developed for him a couple decades ago. We continue with his legacy, and we do trainings and podcasts related to living with disabilities, and we welcome you to be part of that. Our School of Social Work offers degrees for undergraduate social workers, master's degree social workers, and we have the only PhD social work program in the state of Iowa. We also have aging studies certificate, resilience and trauma-informed certificate, and critical cultural competence. And we provide those certificates through the School of Social Work, but for the University of Iowa. Let me tell you just a little bit about social work, since I'm not sure how familiar you are. In fact, I remember when I was in college, I was out on a blind date, and the guy asked me what my major was. And I told him social work, and he said, we're gonna get along just great. I love to party. Not that kind of social. The social work profession promotes social change, and in particular, problem solving in human relationships. That's social work in a nutshell. And the empowerment and the liberation of people to enhance well-being. We use theories of human behavior and social systems to intervene at the points where people interact with their environments. So looking at how a person is influenced and impacted by the environment, and how the person can influence and impact the environment, is a lot of what social workers do. And we try to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table, right? If decisions are being made about people, then those folks should have a voice. And so many social workers work individually with families or one person, one-on-one, maybe in a counseling or an advocacy role. Other social workers work at the organizational level, planning programs or leading organizations. Other social workers focus on social policy and work on social security benefits, adoption issues, all sorts of things. So social workers are educated to work at systems change from the micro, from the individual, to the macro. And so our social workers leave the program with beginning skills, making change in each of those areas. And the purpose of that change is to promote human well-being and fairness. We take an ecological perspective, and that is looking at the person in his or her or their environment. We also believe in the strengths perspective, that rather than labeling people by what they can't do or who they aren't, that we look at the inherent strengths that all of us have and build on those strengths. And especially when you're working with older adults, nobody gets to be 80 without learning something about themselves and about others. And so how do we identify those strengths that people were born with or that they developed over a lifetime, and build on those strengths to help them improve their quality of life or their well-being? Core values of social workers include self-determination. And this is a very interesting issue in long-term care where I do my scholarship. Because in many long-term care settings, there are rules and policies set up to protect people. And we have to recognize that just because somebody's an older adult doesn't mean that they don't get to make bad decisions. So as long as somebody has the cognitive capacity to understand the implications, then a social worker is going to see how can we help enhance self-determination. So helping people live the way they want to live as long as it's not hurting other people. Once a person loses the ability to understand the impact of their choices, then we have to do things that help protect people. but any of you who are parents know that, we make choices our whole life, our kids make choices our whole life, and sometimes we learn the most from decisions that went awry. But as long as they're not hurting somebody else and people understand the implications of it and choose to take those risks, then social workers are going to lean into helping people have the quality of life that they want. Another core value is the importance of relationships, and not just in a superficial way, but in a very deep and profound way. Human beings are social beings. We need each other. Some people need a lot of social interaction, others need very little. But we need to feel connected, and we need to feel related at different levels to other people. We need other people. And so setting up the social environment so that these relationships can develop and flourish naturally is very, very important, because our health depends on it. And in some cases, so do our lives. Because people who feel completely disconnected sometimes give up the will to live. So it can be life-threatening. These social relationships are so important, not only for the highest quality of life, but just to also maintain a minimum quality of life. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about today, is social relationships, but with people with dementia. I'll say just a few more words about social work in the context of long-term care or in the context of nursing homes. Social workers deal a lot with issues related to mental health, interpersonal communication skills. That can be resident-to-resident communication issues, families to resident communication issues, staff and family who are having maybe a little bit of an abrupt relationship, call on the social worker to kind of help tease apart what's going on and identify the strengths in the family and the staff to try to work toward the common goal of quality of life for residents. Social workers learn and practice good group dynamics and decision making and goal setting, and then also we have skills to diffuse volatile emotional situations. Social workers know that human relationships can be really messy, and we don't run from that. We know that's part of the human situation, and we also have some education and training and practice in trying to get right in the middle of messy interpersonal relationships and trying to figure out how it can be a win-win situation. So, especially with family issues, I know that in my work in some nursing homes that the medical director doesn't want to deal with it. The director of nursing has had it with the family. Your social worker is somebody that you should be able to turn to and ask for some assistance, because we need those families to remain involved to the extent that they want to, and to the extent that the resident or the tenant wants them involved. Connecting people with community resources, advocacy, and then I've talked about some of the other things. So your social work staff have many skills, and don't hesitate to tap them when you're in need, or even in advance to try to develop good relationships with families and tenants. Now I'm going to switch from talking about social work to talking about dementia. And many of you are familiar with dementia, but there may be some new staff members who haven't had a whole lot of training with dementia. When I'm talking about dementia, I'm talking about the broad umbrella of impaired brain functioning. When we talk about dementia in long-term care settings, the most common kind of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. Far and away in long-term care settings, if somebody has dementia, it's likely to be Alzheimer's. But Alzheimer's is not the only type of dementia that we see in long-term care. And that's where you need the expertise of the medical and nursing staff to help identify, well, what kind of dementia is this likely to be? Because different kinds of dementias impact people in different ways. So a person's capabilities will differ by the type of dementia that they have. But people with dementia have a sense of disorientation. Things that you take for granted, that we take for granted, just getting through society, become fuzzy for people and confusing to people, and they're disoriented. One simple example. This morning, when you woke up, you knew it was morning. Sometimes people with dementia, especially if it's a bit advanced dementia, will wake up, but they won't know what time of day it is. They will just get done eating, and maybe somebody by mistake will put a fresh plate in front of them, and they won't know whether they just eaten or not. Sometimes the types of dementia, especially a dementia called Pick's dementia, people really lose the sense of how full they are or how hungry they are. So this disorientation is a hallmark of dementia, and you know from your own personal experience how frustrating being disoriented can be. Any of you who've traveled across timelines, maybe on vacation or to go to another timeline to visit family who live in Europe or someplace that have a different timeline, just the 6-hour difference can goof you up for days. So this disorientation is extremely stressful for people who have it. And somebody looking at somebody with dementia would not know what they're disoriented about at that time. Language impairment develops with most types of dementia. That a person's ability to communicate what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they want can be really compromised. And the deeper the person is into dementia, the more compromised they're going to get. That too is extremely frustrating, especially for people who talk a lot or have talked a lot their whole life, to not be able to find the right words, not be able to form the words, not be able to communicate with somebody else. Extremely frustrating. Some people also have visual and spatial perception issues. They can't tell 3 dimensions very well. They may be walking and feel really unsteady because the floor looks further away than it is, or it looks closer than it is. And so these kinds of things, again, contribute to the feeling of being disoriented and can be extremely frustrating. In some cases, there are emotional changes. Some people will remain more or less the same personality throughout dementia. Other people have very profound changes. And some people also experience emotional instability. We can also see that with certain kinds of strokes that can leave people emotionally a little bit unstable. Personality changes can occur, and then cognitive skills are very much impacted by dementia. The ability to learn new things. So the ability to remember things and learn new things, and then just a general condition of disorientation. You can imagine how that must feel day in, day out, day in, day out. It's extremely frustrating situation. So when somebody has advanced dementia, advanced Alzheimer's disease, let's talk about Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's is a type of dementia that is progressive, meaning it only gets worse. We don't have a cure for Alzheimer's disease. We don't have a reliable way to keep somebody on a plateau. If you have Alzheimer's, over time it's going to get more, it's going to progress, and the person's going to become more disoriented. Some people go through that over the course of 20 years since diagnosis, some people 12 years since diagnosis, some people 5 years or 4 years. Again, it can depend on the type of dementia and also where in the brain the tangles are that are impacting the person's ability, at least people with Alzheimer's. So if we're assuming that if people have just been diagnosed or they have a mild dementia, still probably quite functional, may need some reminders, but they'd be able to act on reminders. People with profound dementia are likely bedbound, may or may not be able to feed themselves. What I want to talk about are people with moderate dementia. So these are people who probably you have residents in this situation, or you've had in the past, and you certainly will in the future. You need to kind of keep an eye on them, because they would wander away, could wander away. You have to be careful with what's in the environment, because if they're sharp objects, they could inadvertently hurt themselves. But they may still be able to walk around, they may still be able to talk, they just have lost judgment. And may be quite disoriented, but still able to live in a setting like that. When we are interacting with people with that situation, we ask ourselves what remains. And by that I mean, what can the person still do? What abilities still remain? Part of our culture in the United States is we put a big emphasis on doing. We are doers. If somebody relaxes too much in our culture, they're suspicious. And what are you up to? What are you going to do when you retire? We're a doing society and culture. And not all cultures are that way. Some cultures really privilege the ability to relax and the ability to take it over, take it easy. We, in general, are doers. And so what can we do to support somebody who may not be able to make decisions on what they can do themselves, or what they should do, or how to do things? I want us to talk about that a little bit. And then how can we support people in this middle area of dementia, where they are still able to walk around, talk, but are quite disoriented? Well, every once in a while, you read something that knocks you over. And this article, it's a research study. I read this article and it changed me. And I've been thinking about this for many years. I didn't read the article right when it was published in 2010. I didn't know about it back then, but when I found it, it changed the way I thought about dementia. I need to tell you that as a social work student, and I earned my MSW here at the University of Iowa, I did one of my practicum in Des Moines with the first Alzheimer's support group in the state. We only had one chapter then, and we had one support group, and people came from Des Moines area and some of the rural areas, and my internship was to work with the people with dementia while their family members were getting some educational and support in a different room. So I've been interested and concerned about people with dementia since early years as a social worker. Let me tell you a little bit about this study. First of all, the study happened here in Iowa City. That's not the reason I read it. But after I read it and was blown away, and then found out it was right here in Iowa City, I was even more interested. Let me tell you about the premise of this study. Justin Feinstein, Melissa Duff, and Daniel Trinnell, they're psychologists. They were interested in the relationship between emotions and memory. And they were trying to separate that. And they did what I think is one of the most interesting experiments that I've heard about. Let me tell you about that experiment. They had 5 people, just 5. 5 people that were in their study. Well, they also had a control group of 5 others, but 5 people they were most interested in. And these 5 people were in a very rare situation. They all had developed, they were all adults, And they all had developed a type of amnesia where they had no memories. But they could communicate. And they could tell you how they feel, they could tell you what they saw, they could tell you what they wanted to do, but they had no memory. Very, very strange kind of amnesia. I'm not familiar with what causes it. I don't know if it's an accident or some kind of a tumor, but these were adults who had this very, very rare, they had amnesia. They couldn't remember minutes after something happened that something happened. Can you imagine going through life like that? All right, let me tell you the experiment. Justin Feinstein, who was a student at that time, brought these 5 people in. They all agreed to the study, and their guardians did, if a guardian was needed. And they sat down. I'm not sure if they were in the room alone or they were with each other. I don't remember. But I bet they were I think it was one-on-one. They brought in people one at a time. Yes, I know that's the case because of how the study unfolded. They sat them down in front of the screen and showed them a series of short clips about things that were depressing. People who looked like they were very sad. And they did this for maybe 8 minutes, a series of changing visual clips of people who were like experiencing loss, who were very distraught, very sad. And then they measured, after this 8 minutes or so of looking at these video clips, they asked the people how they felt. Now, they had also asked people how they felt. How are you feeling right now? 20 minutes before they showed them the video clip. So they had the people come in. They had them settled for about 10 minutes. They went and asked them a long series of emotional related questions. How, on a scale of 1 to 5, how are you feeling? This, joy, sadness, happiness, a long, long catalog of feelings, and they could report how they felt. So they had the baseline information about how people were feeling, these people with amnesia, and then they showed them the 8 minutes of these sad clips, depressing clips, and then 30 seconds after that, they asked people how they felt, and they reported how they felt, and they asked them what they saw in the clips. They had no memory of what they saw in the clips. That's 30 seconds after the clips. Then a couple minutes, like 5 minutes after, they again measured their mood and asked them what they remembered from the clips. They remembered nothing from the clips. And then a half an hour later, they measured their mood and they asked them what they remembered from the clips, and they remembered nothing from the clips because they have amnesia. They found out, Justin and his colleagues found out, that there was a huge decrease in mood from 20 minutes before the videos to 30 seconds after. And also they had researchers behind a two-way mirror, a one-way mirror, so they could watch the facial expressions of people one by one to see, was there any clue on how they might be feeling. People reported very, very sad levels 30 seconds after the video, especially compared to their baseline, because everybody was measured first. 30 seconds later, very, very sad on this long catalog of feelings. 5 minutes later, very, very sad. 30 minutes later, they had no idea what they had seen. They don't remember what they've seen. They're still sad. Very, very sad. Their mood endured well past the ability to remember what inspired that mood. Now, a week later, the research team brought everybody back, one by one. They did a baseline. They showed them 8 minutes of happy happy film clips, people having a lot of fun, people having joy, people looking like they were really having a good time together. And they measured their mood 30 seconds after, 5 minutes after, 30 minutes after. And again, they asked the 5 participants, what do you remember about the clips? And many of the people didn't even remember they saw clips, let alone what they saw, or that they were even there to look at anything. So they had no memory of it. And yet, they got in a good mood from seeing these clips, and they remained in a good mood well after the ability to remember what put them in a good mood. The study only lasted 30 minutes, but they only measured at 30 minutes. But that's where I came in, and my thinking as a social worker. Wow, if a person's mood lingers, even after we forget why we're in a good mood or in a bad mood, well, how might we be able to use this knowledge with people with dementia? Because people with dementia can't remember. I mean, that's part of this whole dementia thing. So if we get them in a good mood, however we do that, will they benefit from that joy, from that good mood longer? Well, I don't have an answer for you because I haven't done the research and I haven't seen that anybody else has done the research. And when I first got interested in this, we didn't have a lot of the measures that we now have for mood. And people with Alzheimer's, unlike people with amnesia, are not really good reporters on how they're feeling. You can't ask them 30 questions about to rating 1 to 5 how they're feeling about all these things because they're not going, many times they're not going to be a reliable answer, and it might even bother them to be asked. So that's the Feinstein study that got me thinking about it, and this is a summary of the study in case I just wanted to make sure that Sarah had it in case anybody wanted to see more about it. And there's the whole way to track it down if you're interested. It's short. So if mood persists with people with amnesia, and I think you will recognize too in your own life, if you get in a really good mood, you're probably going to be floating on air for a while. How long? I don't know. I haven't ever thought about that. And if you're in a poor mood, you're probably walking around in a poor mood for a while. So if mood lasts longer than immediately, which we know they do, how can we use that to improve the lives of people with dementia? Can the feeling of being happy for people with Alzheimer's persist long after the person remembers why they were happy in the first part? I don't have an answer for that, but I suspect that the answer is yes. I suspect that if we as community members, family members, staff members can help elevate the mood of people with Alzheimer's, that we are helping them not just at that moment, but I think that mood will linger like it does with people with amnesia. By the same token, if people feel dissed, people with dementia, Alzheimer's feel sad or dissed or angry, that mood may be lingering too, much longer than we think about it. So being very careful about sparks of joy in everybody, but especially people with dementia, I think is an avenue we haven't really fully explored. How do we introduce these feelings of happiness and joy to people with Alzheimer's? Maybe 4 or 5 ideas here from the group on working with people with dementia. What have you done that, or what have you seen that has resulted in people's mood being lifted? I see a hand there. Please go right ahead.
Singing and dancing.
Singing and dancing. Yeah, that works for a lot of us. But absolute, excellent. Yeah, there's 2 examples. Give me 2 more. Somebody from this side of the room.
Photos.
Photos. Looking at photos. Okay. And something else.
Laughter.
Laughter. Yes. All right, so we know how to put ourselves in a better mood and how to help other people be in a better mood. Are we being deliberate about that with the people with dementia that we're working with? We should be. We should be really deliberate about helping people's mood elevate and then helping to keep that mood elevated. When? What's the time of day to be doing this? And most people are going to say, well, all the time. Well, there might be times that are more advantageous than others. Back to the how. The dancing, the music, the looking at photos, it's in part that there's joy in motion for many people. There's also, anytime we recognize another person's humanity, we each kind of get a little tick of good feeling. Walmart knows that. That's why they have greeters. When you go to a wedding, there's usually greeters. Sarah met me at the elevator, so I would not have to look for this place alone. That recognizing that it's important to connect, that's human. So what can we be doing to let the person with dementia know that we know they're in there, that we're recognizing them, that we like them, that they're a likable person, that they belong. Feeling that disoriented, it's possible that they don't feel that they belong anywhere, or they don't know where they belong. Or that might be why so many people with dementia are talking to their mother, who has been dead for decades, or thinking that their kids are still toddlers, a time in their life when they belonged. So what are we doing deliberately when we clean out their rooms, or serve them food, or escort them to the van or something like that? How are we recognizing them as a unique person who is likable and who is respected and who you see as important? How do we communicate to people with dementia? I see you. I see you. In the hospital, ICU means intensive care unit. In long-term care, ICU should be about interpersonal connections and communications. When I started thinking about doing this study, I talked to some staff members about what time of day would it make the most sense to do this. Well, it depends how long the good mood lasts. So should we be spending extra time and effort and resources first thing in the morning, trying to get somebody in a good mood, thinking that might get them through their morning activities? Should we try to do this before they're going to have to do some kind of a difficult transition? Do we do it after supper? Or if we do it after supper, will that make it harder for them to go to sleep? Or if they laugh or feel connected or feel joy, will they be more relaxed and go to sleep easier? These are all empirical questions. These are all research questions. I do not have the answer to that. But in your day-to-day experience working with people with dementia and Alzheimer's, I hope you're open to seeing how little things you do, little ways you connect with people, little ways you show that you're happy to be with them can change their life and change your life also. One idea is TimeSlips that I have used with students. How many of you are familiar with TimeSlips? Nobody. Okay. I'm looking at my time, so I see that I've been talking longer than I thought I would. TimeSlips is a group activity. It's designed for people with dementia. It's created by Ann Bastings, a professor at the University of Wisconsin, and she's a theater professor. Ann Bastings' approach to this group activity goes like this. It's a story creating activity. And I've done it at Oak Knoll before with your activity director, Lindsay. I had some students with me, and we came and did it here. It's a lot of fun. What is it in a nutshell? You get people around a table, people with dementia around a table, maybe 5 people with dementia around a table. And you show them, you give them each a picture that of something a little absurd or a little funny or a little bit unusual. I posted some pictures over there, and I'm going to show you some in this presentation. So everybody is holding that image. I realized I needed to laminate them because often people with dementia are going to fold them up or stretch them over. And sometimes I just bring extra ones and let people do that. But then you have a person with a big paperboard flip chart, and we're writing down every single thing that anybody with dementia says in response to some open-ended questions. And you would be surprised that when somebody takes notes on what you say, even when you have dementia, you feel important. And so we would show an image. Here's one. This one was always fun. Everybody would get this image, they'd have it in their hands, and then we would just ask, the facilitator would ask some open-ended questions, and then one of the student scribes would write down every single thing that was said, even if it made no sense at all. And when the persons with dementia realized that nobody was judging what they said, we just accepted it and put it on there, many people talked more than usual. Some people didn't talk at all. We don't force people to talk. They still benefit from being in a group of people who are having fun. I have never done a TimeSlips where somebody didn't break into song and other people joined them. And if it got to the point where nobody did it spontaneously, I would ask them, like in this picture, I'd say, what song is playing on the radio? There's no right or wrong answer. Guess what? As Ann Bastings taught us, imagination lasts longer than memory. People can imagine what's on the radio. And usually it was a song they sung as a teenager, and somebody else in that room sang that song too. And we'd hear two songs from 60 years ago, or something like that. So with TimeSlips, we're asking open-ended questions, we're recording everything that everybody says, their contributions are validated, and sometimes there are people with dementia whose voices get really, really small and really, really strained and weak. Then I'll set a student next to that person. And so that person might say, go tell it on the mountain is on the radio. And I'm not going to hear that if I'm the facilitator. So the student next to it will say, Molly said, go tell it on the mountain. And then the scribe would write, Molly said, go tell it on the mountain was on the radio. And then every 5 or 6 minutes, we read through what everybody said. And they'll forget they said it. And they'll laugh again. Because people get pretty silly with these stories. So how did the truck get up there? Who's driving the truck? Where were they going? And then we write down the whole story. This is one of the pictures that really got started on TimeSlips. And these images are on the TimeSlips website. You know, what's going on in this picture? And some people will say, he's running away. And other people will say, what do you mean he? That's a she. That's clearly a little girl. And then we'll say, what's their name? What does it smell like in that bag? Again, you can say what's in the back, what sounds. So people can participate, and it's amazing to see people chiming in and enjoying themselves and participating. You know, what's the story with this character? What's his name? When was he born? What's he doing? Some people think he's in a Cheerio. Other people think he's in a donut. Other people are sure it's a she. Other people are saying, you know, just they're reacting to it. So creative expression is important for everyone, but it's even more important for people with dementia for whom other avenues of self-expression can be severely limited. It's something nice to be in a small group of people where you are accepted. And what you say is validated and accepted, and people aren't trying to tell you, no, it's not Tuesday. No, your husband's daddy won't be coming today. Instead, we're joining in their world, and we're validating it. And this is the famous Ann Bastings quote that imagination lasts longer than memory. So these creative expressions within the community can lead to positive social interactions, can really contribute to a sense of belonging. When you laugh with a small group of people, you feel closer to them. And it gives people a sense of contributing. And then they hear their name, that they said this, that they said that, and other people laugh again. You feel good when you can make people laugh. And the environmental press seems appropriate. What do I mean by that? Environmental press is about how much stress is there in your environment, how much social stress. Is there so much pressure on you that you're feeling anxious and you're shutting down? Is there not enough pressure on you that you're bored to tears and can barely stay awake? So our environmental press is most of us function best when there's just a little bit of pressure on us, and then we excel. The same with people with dementia. So in summary, I'm here to say that I think that the impact of a good mood may very well last much longer than the memory of what caused it. We know that with people with amnesia. We've experienced that in our own life. I cannot swear that that's true for people with dementia or Alzheimer's, but I have no reason to believe that it's not. And the research still has to be done. I'm here to also say that it is a good use of your time and your attention and your company's resources to spend the time to look at somebody in the eyes and let them know, I see you. And any way that we can spark joy in each other's lives, including people with dementia, those benefits can last well beyond that. And I've done Alzheimer's support groups. I don't do them anymore, but every once in a while I'm a guest. And some people will say, I can't visit anymore. She doesn't recognize me anymore, and it just breaks my heart. I understand that, I accept that. However, do you know that if you can get her to smile or laugh or look at pictures or tell stories or do something silly, even if she doesn't know who you are, she's benefiting from that visit. And she's likely benefiting from that visit well after you leave the parking lot. And for some people, then that is enough. If there's a chance that I can get, and they know how to get, somebody in your family, you know how to get them in a good mood. So what's your response? Or any comments from anybody? My formal comments are over, but I'd like to know what you think.
I definitely agree. I feel like it's my purpose when I work in a nursing home to make everyone feel good, like I attributed to them having a good day. And I think that definitely goes with the people that are, have the dementia diagnosis, and it's nice to have some insight on how to, improve their quality of life.
Thanks. Yeah. Have you seen anything have you seen somebody get in a good mood or get in a bad mood and then kind of stay that way for a half an hour or so? I see some.
Yeah, absolutely. It always feels like such a big success when somebody is having one of those down moods and then you see it kind of crack open into something different and somebody catches their fancy or makes them laugh. And it not only changes the quality of life of the person who's having that affective experience, but also ripples out into other people and certainly makes the jobs of staff much easier. So
Yes.
that injection of joy is bigger than just the one person.
Moods are contagious. And you can tell when you go, even to a grocery store. Hy-Vee has made their reputation on being friendly. When I got married in Sioux City 30-some years ago, I had been living in Washington, D.C. before that, and people came from D.C. to go to Sioux City, and they're like, what is there to do? And I said, there's plenty to do. First of all, I want you to go to Hy-Vee and ask where the cinnamon is. I want you to go to a bank and ask for change for $1. And I want you to go to a gas station. And then we met later for drinks, and people were blown away. They took me right to the cinnamon. They gave me 4 quarters. They asked if I wanted dimes. So yeah, there's there are things that we can be doing, and we have a lot of impact on the mood of people around us, including people with dementia. And they may be taking a lot of cues from us. And it's worth it to spend that extra time when you're taking out their trash or helping them find something to wear, to connect with them. It'll also make your job more fulfilling, I think, too, for just the reasons you were saying. I have to tell you something. As I was looking for this building, I was walking into the front door. There was a big old truck there doing some kind of maintenance here. And the truck's license plate was Joy 234. So I thought, okay, I'm at the right place to be giving a talk about dementia and joy. But any other comments? Any other questions?
I'll just add one more comment, and this is one of my theories, is that much like, they say people who lose their sight, their hearing becomes more acute, or, whatever. I feel like people with dementia who may be losing their ability to communicate in, kind of more socially acceptable ways, I do think that their sensitivity to mood and people's energies and things gets heightened. It's like their superpower. And so to me, that gives even more responsibility for us to really manage and be aware of that kind of deliberate, what we're bringing into the room when we're working with residents or just walking down the hall, because they really pick up on that even more than they might have earlier in life, and even more than they might than other people who are more, normal or cognitively intact.
It may be all that disorientation then leads people to focus more on those things, because they either have to, or they're not able to do what they were using their brain the way they were able to before. I'm not sure. That's a really interesting insight. That people with dementia may be more keen to the emotional tenor of a place. There's been a lot of work with iPods in people with dementia, letting them listen to the music that they really like, and that helping also connecting people. The video clips that were used in the Feinstein study were both visual and auditory. So I'm not sure what it is. I don't know how important hearing is. I don't know how it varies by the type of dementia you might have. All those kind of variables have yet to be discovered. However, I do think there's no side effects that are dangerous from trying to help somebody get in a good mood. And with many of the medications that we use, there may be some side effects or some trade-offs. But trying to interpersonally increase somebody's mood, that's side effect free. Thank you for your time and attention, and continue your great work with the COVID preventions and dealing with that.
Thank you.